Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith and I'm excited to be diving back into the world of Oathsworn, this time for a two-part video series on the gameplay itself. This is going to be the first video and there will be one following this. However, if you want to know more about the Kickstarter prototype components that I have in front of me on camera here as well as off camera, most of which you should see through the next two videos, but if you don't, you'll be able to see them in that other one. You'll see in the top right hand corner there's an eye. I'm going to link to that previous Kickstarter prototype overview so you can go check out the components that I received as part of this preview. Another thing to note is that everything you see here is in prototype form, so everything is subject to change. And another major disclaimer is that you are potentially going to see spoilers of the actual game, so be aware of that as well. So the very first thing we need to do to begin Oathsworn in terms of gameplay is we need to create what's called the free company, and it has to be comprised of 4 characters, no matter how many actual human players are playing the game. So if we're playing solo, like I will be, I have to control 4 characters. Now the game implements the companion ability, which is very, very nice because it allows you to mix and match playing companions and full characters. Full characters are how you would normally play if you had 4 people around the table. Everyone would take a full character, meaning the full player dashboard, full set of ability cards, and be using their character at full capacity. However, if you're playing solo, you still can do that and control 4 characters at full, but it's quite a bit to manage potentially, especially if you're starting out. So it might be wiser to mix and match some companions in there. So how does that work? Well, essentially, I can choose, because I'm only one single player, to have 1 full character involved where I'm managing 1 deck, and then 3 companions where I'm just dealing with abilities and their smaller and more streamlined character cards. Or I could do 2 and 2, 2 companions and 2 full characters. Or I could do 3 full characters and 1 companion. It really does allow for however you want to manage that based on however much of a threshold you have for dealing with multiple characters and strategies. So for this Kickstarter preview, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be controlling 2 full characters and 2 companions, and I've selected them, so let's go over those characters right now. So the very first major thing you'll do in Oathsworn beginning your journey is to create what's called the free company. No matter how many players are playing the game, in my case I'm playing solo, you need to ensure that free company has 4 characters. They can be full characters or companions, but if you have 4 human players around the table, every one of them will be taking a full character. If you're playing solo or co-op, that's where these companions come into play to help basically lower the amount of management of controlling 4 characters. So for instance, I am going to be playing solo through this Kickstarter preview, and I could decide to take 4 full characters, meaning I have to manage 4 decks and all the abilities and all the different player boards for those characters. Could be quite a bit. So I've decided to scale that back thanks to these companion cards, allowing me to be able to take a more streamlined version of the characters into the game. Now this is where it's fun, because when the final product arrives, you'll be able to choose however and whatever you'd like to do in a solo capacity in terms of management. So if you're really gunning to control 4 full characters, you can do that. If you'd like a more streamlined, quicker game, you could control 1 full character and 3 companion characters. Or maybe you want a more balanced approach of 2 full characters and 2 companions. That's the great thing about playing solo. You get all those options to you when you create your free company for the first time. So in my case, I've chosen to go with the balanced approach. 2 full characters and 2 companions. Let's go ahead and talk about the individuals I chose to bring into the free company. And this is what my free company going into Oathsworn is going to look like. We're going to go with the Exile here, as well as a companion priest. Again, they're not linked like this. I've just got them placed out like so. But we got the Exile as a full character I'll be controlling. I also have the Warbear because it looks absolutely amazing. I just love the look of that thing. And then we've got the Ranger. So really we got the priest and the Ranger as kind of our support characters. They're going to be right behind us. And then we kind of got the guys swinging the heavy axes up front. So hopefully that's a nice balanced attack going into it. There were some other great characters to choose from. It was very difficult to make that decision, but some of the fun is just trying to figure out the synergies between the characters and which ones work best. So the only way to do that is to try them out. Let's take a look at the backstory of the exile. It says there is only one people group that has successfully survived life in the Deepwood itself, the Scar tribes. Living off the very creatures that hunt them, the tribes gain their name from the self-mutilation they perform to lure beasts from the woods. Drawn by the scent of the blood, the beasts find a warrior bloodied and alone. Then the pack falls on the beast, slaying it with brutal weapons and unbridled ferocity. Death is God to the tribes, and bone their currency. Nowhere is life more fickle than in the treetop dwellings of these bands. The slightest misstep can see the pack turn on its own. Occasionally, one of their number will survive such a death sentence and manage to escape. Those that do usually perish under the canopy of the Deepwood. Very rarely, however, one may live long enough to find other humans and even find a distant kinship. Now let's take a look at the second character I'll be fully controlling. This one is the Ursus Warbear. Once in many moons, a solitary giant will appear at the gates of a town or city. 8 feet tall and clad in dark armor, an Ursus Warbear is a terrifying sight to behold. Feral potency exudes from these creatures, and the promise of violence lurk behind predatory eyes. The people of the settlements welcome these beings, however, as it is known that all that power is directed towards one purpose: the hunt. Ursus live long lives and spend it gaining tales of glory to add to their armor. An Ursus may not wear a piece of armor until they have earned glory enough to etch it in the iron. The more heavily clad a warbear is, the more hunts they have survived. Moving from one hunt to the next, warbears offer themselves freely to free companies. Caring not for the human's struggle, they seek only the glory of a new kill to be immortalized in metal. Next up we have the Priest, but remember during gameplay I'll be using the Priest in the companion form, so I'll be using the smaller card like this, but for the purposes of learning about the backstory of the character, it's on the back of the character board that you use when you're playing with a full character. So for your enjoyment, let's go ahead and read the backstory of the Priest. Miracles have ceased, or so the church says. The ecclesiarch proclaimed that the pillar and path is all the righteousness need. Right body and right action. However, meeting in upper rooms and hidden places, followers still practice the old ways. Manifestations in these meetings are rare, but words like healing are occasionally attached to miraculous tales of sickness being cast out and wounds disappearing. Adherence to the way can be found in all echelons of life. Those with a strength of arms and a burden for humanity often find themselves drawn to the free companies. Beyond the grip of the church, they can practice their faith and live out their conviction in the bluntest sense possible, in the swing of a hammer. The fourth character joining the free company in companion form is going to be the Ranger. So let's go ahead and find out about the Ranger's backstory. Humanity has encountered several races, but few are as mysterious as the Fey Adendrai. Once members of an ancient woodland, many now travel to Virum to seek refuge amongst the human settlements. Inspiring curiosity and fear in equal measure, they settled what became known as the Green Streets. There they ply their trades, using a non-verbal merchant language called the Knock. As such, little is known of this people beyond their skill with herbs and hunting. The Adendrai find themselves in high demand amongst the free companies. Rangers in particular are sought after, their prolific speed and agility saving many lives in the field. It is not uncommon for a beast's blow to be turned aside by a well-placed arrow or its charge halted by invisible snares. It is said the Rangers grow their arrows within their own bodies, ensuring their craftsmanship and deadly accuracy. Next, we're going to go through the steps to set up the Exile character. Of course, this is a full character using the full character dashboard here, as well as the Warbear I'll also be using in full capacity. So the instructions as to how I set up the Exile can also be carried over to the Warbear, even though I won't show the Warbear setup during this video in order to speed things up. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to grab one of the HP dies, and in this case, Prototype has this nice red die. You're going to want to make sure it's set to 6, and you're going to set this in the HP slot like so. The next important step is to find all the ability cards that correspond to the same character you're setting up. So in my case, the Exile is being set up, so I found all the ability cards that pertain to the Exile. The other way you can find them is taking a look at the weapon in the center and matching it up right there. The next step is to find all the starting items that your full character is going to be using. In this case, it's going to be 2 hatchets for the Exile and a tattered rawhide wrappings. Something important to note is that each character can equip at most 1 armor item, 1 gear item, and 2 hands worth of weapons. You can either have 1 weapon that takes up 2 hand slots, or you can have 2 individual one-handed weapons, as you can see here with the 2 hatchets for the Exile. Next up, let's talk about might and defense. We'll start off with might. So might is tracked at the top of your character board right here. You got 4 slots worth of might. You're going to look at your items that you currently start with, and you can see here my hatchets and my tattered rawhide wrappings. You're going to take a look inside of this middle box here on the weapons to see whether or not you happen to have any items or weapons that will actually give you some might out of the gate. Certain cards inside the game are going to have that icon inside of it, which essentially is a yellow cube to indicate that you start with that might. So for instance, if I had a character that started with the Great Maul, you'll see it has a yellow cube in there, and that would mean I would place 1 yellow cube of might inside of here. But as you can see, I don't have that, so I actually don't start with any might on this character. Next up is defense. You take a look at the armor that you currently have, and you take a look at the value in the center of it. It has a 2, so you're going to take a 2 token and place that up in your defense value right here to remind yourself that that's what you have. Of course, there's going to be things inside the game that are going to change and manipulate this potentially as you go along, so that is tracked up here. Another thing to note is if you do not have any armor on your character whatsoever, then the base defensive value you always have is 1. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to place 8 Animus Gems into the reserve area of this track right here. In the center, you have the regen token that should be a 6 when you begin the game, and then right here is the active area. So currently we have 8 Animus Gems sitting in a reserve area before we begin play. The last step for the full character setup is to give yourself 3 groats, which I will place right next to my character board in a row here. All have a single value. And in the exact same manner that I set up the Exile full character, I'm setting up my Warbear as my second full character. Again, look for specifics that are unique for this character. Everything is the same except for the hand of cards, which should actually match the title of the individual you're using. In this case, I've got 7 for the Warbear. You'll notice that the items for my Warbear are different. I have the Felling Axe and the Pig Iron Coat. You'll also notice on the Felling Axe that it shows 1 yellow might should be placed in the might track up above, so I've gone ahead and done that. Also, defense set to 3 as it matches the 3 value inside that Pig Iron Coat. So you'll see there's already some differences in the loadout between the 2 full characters I've chosen. Moving right along into the companion setup, I've got my 2 companion cards here along with the ability cards for them for the Priest and Ranger. I've also gone ahead and put an HP or hit point die in each of the slots set at 6, very similar to the full character setup. Just like the full characters, the companions also get their starting items. So you'll see here the Priest has a Great Maul, which is going to give 1 might cube, which I've slotted in there, as well as a Pig Iron Coat, which has a defense value of 3. We'll talk about defense in a second. Over here on the Ranger, same thing applies. Starting items, short bow is equipped, yellow might token placed in there. We also have the Tatter Rawhide wrappings. Next up, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about defense. So how the companions work in terms of defense, different than the full characters, is you'll notice there's shields inside the defensive value, meaning that if we don't have any armor whatsoever equipped on our particular companion, then by default the defense would be 2 for the 2 shields shown inside. However, if we do have armor for our companion, we get the armor value plus 2 on top of it. So for this particular Priest, I'm going to have an armor value of 5. In the Kickstarter prototype components I have numbered tokens from 1 through to 6, but not 5. So I'm using a 4 and a plus 1 to represent the 5. In the final version, this will be just 1 token. And then over here on the Ranger, we've got 2 inside the defense as a default to start, and 2 from the Tattered Rawhide wrappings for a total of 4. So we'll be slotting these in like so. I'll just be stacking these on top of each other in the defensive slot. The next step of the companion setup is to get the Animus gems into each of the reserve slots for both of the companions here. So you'll see that I'll be starting with 2 in each of the companions' reserve slots to begin the game. For clarification purposes, as I mentioned earlier, these are companion cards. These cards below, which are tied to the companion cards, are called archetype cards, and there might be more than just a single one in the final version. The rules make reference to the fact you take 3 archetype cards for a chosen companion, but in this Kickstarter prototype, I only have 1 per companion. And similar to the full characters, the companions also gain 3 groats each. So at this point we have the full characters set up as well as the companion characters. Next we're going to move into the story setup, which is going to have us focusing on whatever encounter board we're moving into. So in this particular case, for this snapshot in the Kickstarter playthrough that I'm using here, we're going to have this particular map sitting in front of us. You'll see there's up to 28 different locations on this particular map ending right there. There could be up to 30 as there is a stack of tokens right here from 1 to 30. You're going to want to keep those handy because as the narrative unfolds, it's going to let you know to place specific tokens on certain areas of the game board that you can then go and interact with to have some type of event or encounter or have the story progress forward. Next, you're going to want to find the time track as well as the clue tokens and time tokens and keep them together, usually next to the encounter board. Find the city event deck, shuffle that together, and as I go through this Kickstarter prototype, there is no cover for the top cards. You can actually see it, but what actually happens based on the choices that are given to you on the top, you have to make a decision and flip it over, so nothing's being spoiled here. But what is important, or what I will do during this playthrough, is I'll always be drawing from the bottom of the deck, so that way I have no idea what type of encounter is coming my way. All the rest of the common items that you have are just shuffled together and will be placed within easy reach. You'll also want to take all the ally cards available to you and keep them in a pile. You don't have to shuffle these, just keep them within easy reach for when called upon. Now, setup in the final version of the game is going to have a number of other steps to go through based on the items coming inside that full version. Things like injury cards and a bunch of other decks of cards that are not included as part of this prototype, for instance. So there'll be additional instructions that you'll want to follow from the finalized rulebook when it's made available in the final game. But for the purposes of this playthrough and this demo, we are going to move forward. So we now have the map in front of us. We have the location tokens ready to go. We're going to move into the app where we're going to have some narrative given to us as to what's happening in this world, and then it's going to present us with a number of choices as we progress through the story. So without further ado, let's journey into the Deepwood.
Green mud sucks at your boots. Every stride a challenge as you trudge through the rain. Your hands grip the thick iron cable of the wire road, pulled taut through rings, sunken into the trunks of hideous trees. For days now, it has been the only evidence of humanity's existence in the Deepwood. Clinging to this lifeline has not worked for everyone, though. You are one less than when you left Verum. It was nothing any of you saw, just a thrum on the wire behind you, and then a scream disappearing into the dark. The memory is fresh in your mind, but this is not the time to mourn, not here. As you travel, vines and black tree trunks, spattered with sickly pink cysts, block your view ahead. Things slither away and rustle through the undergrowth, but they are of little concern. One cannot afford to jump at every noise in this place, or else you'd go mad. It is only when the sounds slither towards you that you need to worry. Relief from walking through this overgrown hell is promised as the huddled profile of the fortress town of Bastone looms in the distance. They are the ones that sent for you. People have been dying here, though not of hunger or of the Deepwood. Those don't leave much of a man when they're done. Something else is happening here, something that is leaving plenty of bodies. The crumbling city walls tower before you. As you approach them, you spot something laying at their base. Do you, 1, explore the base of the wall? 2, get out of the rain and head for Bastone's gates?
So as it states inside the app, I'm going to go ahead and place my free company marker, which is going to be my warbear, in place 21, the Wire Road. I'm also going to go ahead and take a card that says Path A and place that nearby. So I have two choices to make. One is to explore the base of the wall around the outside here, or to get out of the rain altogether and head for Bastone's Gates, which is very close by to the Wire Road we're currently on. So the question is, which should I do? Well, the wisest choice seems to be, based on the narrative here, to get out of the rain and head for the city of Bastone. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that.
The travel has been hard, and you think it prudent to get out of the deafening rain rather than be distracted. There's plenty to do here before nightfall.
So as you just saw inside the app, all the characters in the game are going to gain what is called a +2 Animus token, and these tokens can be spent during gameplay in order to immediately regenerate 2 Animus. So you'll be moving 2 Animus from your reserve pool into your active pool. You'll see this more when we actually use them, but all 4 of my characters are going to gain it. So that worked out pretty nicely. Quite happy with that decision to get out of the rain, so let's continue our journey. The app has instructed us to place location token 22 from this pile right here into the slot at the main gate. Next, the app instructs us to take the free company marker, which is my miniature here, move us to the main gate where we currently are located, and we're going to take this location token here and place this on the time track. This is representative of the time taken to move around the game world. This is a really interesting way of keeping track of the choices that we make along the way in terms of how much time is being consumed. When using the app, you can go ahead and use the top side of the token with the numerical value. If you happen to be using the scenario book directly because you don't want to use the app, then you can go ahead and just flip this token over for reference. You'll see 2 different numbers here. This again is going to relate back to what type of path you're following and the number in the book you should be following in order to read next. But in the case for me, being that I'm using the app, I'm going to leave it on the numerical 22 side.
As you approach the thick wooden gate, a small slat slides unevenly open and a weary, coal-caked face peers out. Moments pass as he eyes you with suspicion, taking inventory of your many weapons. Then one of you reveals the mark on your wrist. He grimaces. Free company, let me get this open. The slat slams shut, and you hear chains strain as a mechanism pulls the gate open, swinging out just wide enough to squeeze through. You move into the gateway passage and find it blocked ahead by an iron portcullis, a second layer of defence creating a quarantine area. In the passage with you is a single table, lit by a foul-smelling lantern on the wall. You hand him your papers. "I'm sure you know the drill," the guard urges as he thumbs through them. Arms extended out from your sides, he raps against you repeatedly with a short hollow tube of wood. He nods, then sniffs, satisfied you have brought nothing of the Deepwood in with you. "You've not come too soon. More bodies last night," he says, as he moves to a rickety table in the corner to mark more paperwork. "Papers say you're 5. A grim silence from you answers his next question. "Right then, an oath fulfilled, I suppose." He looks uncomfortably away and motions towards a logbook with ink and quill beside it. "Make your mark."
Now we have a decision to make between 5 different options. We have to figure out which statement most accurately describes the free company that I'm using. The first one is, you are faithful to the oath and to your God. You trust that your arm is given strength by more than mere muscle. The second one is, you are the last men standing, the ones who seal the breach and protect the innocent. Shoulder to shoulder, you will hold the line whatever comes at you. The third one is, the Deepwood is fierce, but you're worse. Never met a problem that can't be solved with a sharp edge. When they come, you will be ready. Number 4 is, death is a dance. You know it well. You flow through fights in perfect form. Training gets you only so far. The rest is raw talent. And finally, number 5 is discipline or death. Keep marching, keep moving, keep fighting until the job's done. So out of these 5, the one that rang true with me the most was number 4. Death is a dance you know well. You flow through fights in perfect form. Training gets you only so far. The rest is raw talent. So I'm going to go ahead in the app. We're going to select that one. So as a result of our selection, we're going to go ahead and gain these battle flow tokens, 1 for each character in the free company. Now, what do these battle flow tokens do? Well, you may spend 1 or more of these tokens on your turn to battle flow cards on 1 cooldown number around your Oathsworn board, as if an ability card had been placed there. And you can use this even as an interrupt. We'll talk a lot more about that when we actually get into the combat. It'll make a lot more sense, but this is a very, very useful token to use in order to get a card that you really want that's cooling down back into your hand quicker.
The guard seals the paper with wax and nods to those outside the portcullis. With a slow grind, the iron gate raises to let you through. You understand your task. Find whoever or whatever is responsible for the unexplained deaths. As you step out onto the main thoroughfare of Bastone, a sea of unwashed citizens churn through the mud, going about their daily struggle. "Welcome to my glorious Bastone," a voice chimes from your right. You all turn to the voice. A street urchin, caked in dirt under an explosion of dark hair, leans nonchalantly against the outer wall. "If I hadn't been so clever, I might have tried to lighten your pockets. Looks like you're too much for me, though, right? You come out of the green all bristling with blades fresh from the wire. No, me ma made no fool, and that's why I'll let you pass without paying my toll. Now, I know what you're thinking. We need that kind of charitable citizen to show us around. Well, usually I'd say no, what with all my responsibilities around town, but for you, I make an exception. For today, and I make this place feel like home for you. Get you anything or anyone you need. Take you anywhere you want and keep you from running into the less reputable around here." Do you, 1, negotiate with the boy, 2, ignore the boy, and attempt to navigate Bastone alone?
So this next decision is actually quite a tough one. I don't know whether or not I want to negotiate with the boy here and pay up in order to find some hopefully useful information, or keep my money and just try to figure myself out through the city. I think it might be kind of fun to just kind of stumble my way through the city without any help and hold on to my coin and hope that I don't run into too much trouble. But there is this other side where if I run into trouble, I could see myself losing coin just from being robbed. But I assume that we're a pretty tough bunch, and I think we're going to try to navigate things on our own here. So I'm going to choose to ignore the boy and attempt to navigate Bastone alone.
Dozens of streets and alleys spread out like a spider web from the town gates. You have lived in Verum, so a small gnarled bug like Bastone should be easy enough to find your way around. You are sure you'll be able to pick up the trail, and that there may even be a banksmith or apothecary to trade with for the supplies you may need for the hunt.
So now we're going to go ahead and perform a reasoning check, difficulty 5. This is considered a group level check, which means only one person out of all the characters needs to do this. I'm playing solo, so it's always going to be me in this case when we're doing group checks. If it happens to be an individual check or a character check, it will specify which character is doing it or should be doing it. And at the same time, potentially all characters might have to do certain checks. We'll see if that crops up later on in the playthrough. But in terms of this particular one, I need 5 successes in total in either the dice, the cards, or a combination of both. And this is where the game gets really interesting in terms of how you go about this. So essentially what happens is you're trying to get up to 5. You have up to 10 white dice at your disposal to roll, or you could draw 10 cards from this white deck if you wanted to as well, because the deck is tailored to be the exact same in terms of odds from the white dice. The only difference with the cards is once you start drawing a few, you know what's in there, plus you know how many are left, and you can start doing a little bit of card counting and your odds might go up in terms of potentially drawing higher successes. So there's that. There's some strategy in using the deck versus the dice, but the dice can also just be a lot of fun for that epic win or that epic fail. Hopefully I don't go the route of the epic fail. And again, you can go either or you can do a combo. So I could choose to roll, 3 dice and pull 3 cards. But how do you fail these particular checks? Well, this is where things get interesting because, yeah, if you're picking up to 10 cards out of the deck or grabbing up to 10 dice or dividing that up and doing 5 and 5, at the end of the day, it sounds like there's no way you could fail. Well, the way you actually lose a check or fail a check is to see 2 blank sides. As soon as you see 2 blanks come up, regardless if it's from cards or dice, your check has failed. Doesn't matter how many successes you got. So that's the delicate balance of how many dice or cards you want to be pulling in order to try to obtain the 5 difficulty check you're trying to get without failing. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of both here. I'm going to try to pull a couple cards from the deck. Maybe I'll pull 2 cards from the deck and I'll roll maybe 4 dice. It's going to be a little iffy. We'll see how this goes. So I'm going to grab 4 dice. This is actually really, I kind of want to do 3 to be honest. And we're going to grab 2 cards. So now that I've decided what I'm going to do, now I can kind of go forward from there. And I have to pull the 2 and I have to roll these dice regardless. If I happen to see 2 blanks across, I've failed. So let's try the cards first. We'll see what happens. Okay, so we got a success. That's good. 1, no blanks there. Next up, a 2, that's good. So there we go, we got 3. So far doing pretty good. Now it just comes down to the dice. We don't want to see 2 blanks on the dice. Oh, just barely did it. Now, if I was playing this out any further, now we know at this point we succeeded, but if I was playing this out any further, a critical hit actually allows you to gain another the same color die and roll it again. So with that crit there, you would think that you were forced to go ahead and have to roll another white die, but you don't. The rules state that you may roll another die that is of the same color that you rolled the crit on. So in this case, if I happen to be in a battle, I might try to risk putting more damage onto an enemy at this point because I have the availability to grab another die and roll it. The danger being if I roll a blank, the entire attack will go down the tubes, which is not exactly the greatest, but knowing that I pass this perception check, there's no reason whatsoever for me to roll the crit.
This city's layout is not the intricate lattice of streets found in Thrace or the vast thoroughfares of Verum. A few quick questions with the locals describe the local avenues.
Now I'm going to go ahead and place all the location tokens that the app instructed me to do. So we have the archive up here, we have the apothecary up here, we have underways over here, number 12, ooh, there it is, the market, 13, the broken oak, 14, the town square, 16 is the tavern, and finally, 19 is the banksmith. I think the first location I'd like to check out is the Broken Oak.
A well-tended inn shows promise. Entering, you find an amber fire glowing in the hearth. It is warm, dry, and seemingly inviting. "Pot's piece," a burly man says, smiling. His eyes are slightly distant, revealing that his attitude may come more from a bottle than his heart. "The yams are fresh and the rum's dark as a Deepwood." A newcomer steps up beside him. "Something's not fresh because it's green, Bram, especially if it's supposed to be yellow." He turns to you. He tries at least, and he's not lying about the rum. "Greycane." The man introduces himself with a nod of deference. "I am the eyes and ears of this town." "The mouth, more like," Bram offers from behind the bar. "I'm also the bankroll of this establishment," he retorts with a knowing look to Bram. After a few pleasantries, Greycane leads a conversation around to the question of what he can do for a free company in Bastone. Hearing of your hunt, a light appears in his eyes. "The son of Lord Arden's been the talk of the town. Word is, he's been frequenting a certain sort of alley, being less than noble. That's where they found his seal, the noble crest, bathed in blood, no body. The crust blame the common folk, but I think it's something else, and I'm glad Davenish had the forethought to call you in."
So my miniature has traveled from the main gate and was in the broken oak. So we're going to go ahead and put it there. Take this off the track and place it on the time track to depict that time passing by. We also gained a clue token, which I'm going to go ahead and place right here. Now at this point, after seeing a couple tokens landing on this time track, you're probably wondering what is the real value here of tracking the time besides just the joy of knowing how much time you're burning inside the city. Well, there's a gameplay element to this as well. 3 different symbols make themselves known right at the very top of each of these circles for 3 different types. This one here, which looks like an arrow at the very top, is for immediate effects that happen. End of story effects are at the one that looks like a novel opened up, and then end of encounter effects are this one right here. End of story effects, like this one right here, says to gain a specific type of token, and these effects are resolved at the end of the story part of the chapter before the encounter if the space is empty. These are often giving you bonus tokens. So in other words, if you're very efficient and you get out of a particular area quickly, you can gain some bonuses. The next one here in line is the immediate effects, and these immediate effects are resolved immediately when a token's placed on that space. They can either be an instruction to draw an event card or a story trigger that will tell you to go to a certain place in the storybook. Lastly, we've got this one right here, which is the end of encounter effects. And these effects are resolved after the encounter is over if the space is empty. This often gives an extra unique item that is collected along with other uniques during the epilogue. And you can see here, this one says extra unique item, as I mentioned. Next up, I'm going to have the free company move from the Broken Oak to the market. Let's check out what's going on there. I'll place this over here on the time track, and let's head to the app.
The market square is filled with vendors hawking wares from carts and tables. The sound of people shouting and the smell of smoked meats and root vegetables fill the air. Dozens of hunched and tired shoulders make their way up from one trade to the next. You split up and casually shop the meagre supplies while keeping your eyes and ears open.
So while at the market, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to spend a little bit of grout and try to gain some wonderful Animus tokens. So we're going to go ahead and grab a +2 Animus token for each of our characters, as each character is going to spend 1 grout in order to do so, because this will be a nice little boost for us going into the future. So I'm going to add 1 of these to each of our characters, paid up all the way. And we can only do this once.
After an hour, you regroup. The tales you hear shed some light on the situation, if only by the absence of anything specific. No one recalls a killing on this side of town. Everyone is tired. They complain of fearful dreams and eyes in the dark, keeping them awake at night. A tinkerer hung himself in his kitchen last night. Many blame the dreams for driving him mad, though others say it is just the way of the world.
Okay, now I'm really interested in the underways because I really think that's probably where we're going to find something interesting, but I'm a little hesitant to move there right away. We also have the Banksmith, the Town Square, the Archive. I thought the market might have some news of this individual and what alley might be hiding in. Maybe the Town Square is a better option, but the underways certainly are interesting. I kind of want to go to the Archive too, to be honest. Yeah, and the tavern actually wouldn't be a bad idea for asking around, but I don't really want to ask because I feel like it'll just waste some time. So let's check out the Archive for number 2. So we're going to move our free company up here to the Archive. We'll take 2, place it on the time track, and see what it has in store for us.
You find the town archives and an irksome clerk named Milas. The deaths, I presume, the clerk says dismissively. I suppose you should follow me then. Everything is collected. You'll not find our numbers wanting. Move nothing. The records Milas helps you sort through deal with a large list of missing persons, a pile dedicated to what appears to be suicides, and a tally of the local dead, with the cause of death inked beside each name. The details are grisly, and some descriptions have no name attached, where only bits of bodies and blood trails were all that remained, yet left no doubt that there was a killing. I don't know why you bother with the peasantry and their ilk. Their numbers wax and wane like the sun, he says dismissively. What should be of concern is my timber figures. 9 cords of wood marked used last month for various reasons, mostly funerals. But records show only 7 cords being pulled in, 2 cords unaccounted for. What is the world coming to? Either the gatekeepers are not doing their job or someone's lying, and there's nothing worse than lying on a census. That's the real crime here.
So certainly some interesting information there at the archives, but not exactly what we were looking for 100%. So how about we do head to the underways now? This is probably going to result in something nasty happening, but we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll find that second clue, because we are trying to find that still. So let's head over here to the underways, and number 7 is going on the time track as we're ticking closer up to that very first mark right here for the story.
Ancient wooden doors mark the entrance to the underways below the city. Inside, looming passages of moist soil, well timbered up and tended, lead ever downwards. Women with tied-back hair carry buckets of roots or yokes of water on their shoulder, as men work the dark loam, sweating in the dull glow of amber lanterns. "I know my workers, and you're not them," an authoritative female voice announces. It is a slight woman with bright eyes, dressed in a man's leather farm clothes. She points at your wrists fearlessly. "Oathsworn, good. Let's make this fast. I am Celeste, Overseer." You explain why you're here. She takes it in and replies, "Nothing amiss down here. Yeah, in the last 3 months I've lost 4, but that's all been above ground. Suicide? Witches? Whatever else stalks the damn streets above, you tell me. I have my men leave in pairs now. No one walks alone upside. Only fool runners like Randall do that. And I've not seen him. He's probably face down in a ditch or face down in that inn the boys go to."
Okay, so let's head on over to the Apocryphy. I'm very, very curious as to what could potentially be over here. We'll head to this node now and move this to the time track.
You have heard that there is an apothecary of sorts in this quarter, situated on the rooftops of a tenement. When you arrive, you find a standalone shack surrounded by gardens and a queue of people. Forcing your way through the door, you enter and find a room which is something between a library, a curiosity shop, and a vegetable stand. A young woman is hunched over a man sitting on a stool, tending a wound. "Wait your turn," the woman says angrily without looking up. When you make no move to leave, she wheels on you, then stops. A moment of panic crosses her face, but she quickly rights herself. "Oathsworn, you better be dying or know someone who is dying to barge in like this." You assuage her concerns and tell her you want to know about the rising body count in the town. "Well, I wouldn't know about that. The dead don't tend to come to me for pulses, now do they?" "No survivors?" you ask. "None that I heard of. Not that I go looking. I've got enough to handle here with the living." She turns back to the man on the stool. As she does, a rock crashes through the lone window in the room, showering it with glasses. "You killed my dad, you witch!" comes a small boy's voice from outside. "She cursed him! I saw it!" This is followed by the sound of small feet running away across the rooftop. The apothecary is visibly shaken. You ask her what was that about, but she busies herself picking up glass and refuses to talk any further. If she knew anything, she was not forthcoming about it, and will be less so now.
So this particular location has opened up the option to trade. Now, even though I can't do this as part of this Kickstarter prototype, in the final version, things like this will be made available to you, and there will be decks of cards specific to this. So what happens in situations like this? Well, when you start a trade, you may trade up to 5 curatives, each one costing a number of groats according to the current chapter. And essentially, these are going to be things that are going to aid you to keep you alive. Next up, I'm going to choose to go to the Banksmiths. We're going to move our free company down here and put the 19 right here over top of this very first node. So at the end of this story, I will not be gaining that additional bonus.
You trudge the muddy streets and find the Banksmith. The building is made fully from brick rather than a cobbled clay and timber affair like most of the town. It is large and imposing, like the 2 guards at its entrance. Gamble the Banksmith is a broad-shouldered man wearing a woven knot apron of fine leather, highlighted with years of coal and grease. The air in the room moves like murky water, heavy with soot and the smell of the forge. Looking behind the banksmith, you can see iron ingots stacked high, a considerable wealth. If you need shaping, I can do that. Want to exchange goods? My son Tam would usually take care of you, though I've not seen him today. He's got more fingers for the math, says the banksmith, holding up a hand with only 3 digits.
One thing that I didn't mention during setup, which is something that's interesting to note, is that the free company has what's called a bag. And that bag at the very beginning of chapter number 1 is going to have the free company card inside. It's also going to have what's called the backpack card, which will have no items inside of it. And this says on it, your free company may carry a maximum of 12 item cards in reserve. Does not include items you are currently carrying. So this is something to be aware of now that we're at the banksmith and we're talking about potentially picking up other items. Also, we also start with 4 men-at-arms allies. So we have these 4 at our disposal. All of these are considered to be inside the free company bag. Now what's important here is this backpack, because it allows us to go ahead and pick things up as a company and store them away to be unequipped and equipped and sold or bought and exchanged through this backpack. So we can go ahead here with this current interaction at the banksmith and potentially pick something up. So now let's get back to focusing on what's going on at the banksmith. So we have our backpack ready to put some stuff inside of it. We got 5 cards that we've drawn off the top of the item common deck, and we're going to go ahead now and talk about what the free company can do, because we can not only buy some of these cards here, we can potentially trade for them as well. And then once we're done interacting at the banksmith, these cards will be taken away out of play. Also, any items the free company currently has, either equipped by a character or in the backpack, can be traded at the banksmith, as I mentioned, but each item is worth a number of groats according to the chapter of the item depicted in the bottom middle of the card. But at the banksmith, charges of 1 groat per item traded apply. So for instance, if I happen to have a 4 value item, that particular banksmith's only going to give me a 3 for it. So let's say hypothetically that you actually owned the buckler and you wanted to trade this in. Well, you'll see the value of the card right down there in the bottom middle says 1. So you would think that with the 1 groat charge that the banksmith's going to hit me with, that this basically is a moot point and I get nothing for it. Actually, anything that's 1 can't be reduced any lower than 1 regardless of any charges, so you always get 1 for it. However, anything else that you try to trade in, of course these are the items available for me to purchase, and I'm using this one solely as an example, but if I want to take my hatchet, for instance, off my exile and for some reason get rid of it and trade it in, and it happened to be a 2 down here, the 1 groat charge would apply from the banksmith and I'd only get a 1 for it. Now, after looking at the items that came up at the top of the common item deck, there's nothing really here that I'm seeing that I like more so than what I already have on my characters. Most of these are starting weapons for the Kickstarter prototype. Obviously, the amount of the common item pool is going to be much larger than the amount that I have for this demo, but I'm not seeing anything here that I really want to actually pick up. So I'm going to basically end my trade here with the banksmith.
The banksmith wants to talk business and nothing more. As soon as you use words like murder, he suddenly decides another customer is more important, so you grudgingly head back out into the rain.
Okay, so our options have certainly dwindled down here. We only have the town square left and the tavern here. Now, which one should I go for is the question. I'm kind of leaning towards the town square now because I really want to try to find that other clue. Honestly, both are great choices because I could see a clue being in a tavern for sure with people talking. That probably should have been something I should have checked out earlier, but the town square has just as much reason to head there too. But you know what? The chance that we might find that alleyway because we didn't find it at the market is probably higher at the town square. So I'm going to take that gamble. We're going to head the free company up here to the town square and we'll place this particular token right here. Now what happens here on the time track is what's called an immediate event, as I described earlier. As soon as a token gets dropped on this, I do exactly what it states here, and it says we're pulling a city event. So I've got my city event deck, which I had put together in the setup, and I mentioned to you guys I was going to grab from the bottom so that I have no idea what I'm going to get. So I'm going to do that right now. We'll grab the bottom card and see what we have in store. A band of street urchins gather around you asking for some iron flecks. They look hungry and are poorly clothed for such cold weather. Do you give them a shill each, or do you shoo them away? Oh, that's a tough choice. Now, the good news is I do still have money left, so I could go ahead and give them a shill each if I wanted to be generous, or I could shoo them away. But I think, being that we're trying to be helpful and get some information out of the individuals here in the city, maybe they'll have something for me. Maybe this will trigger something positive because I haven't found anything yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and flip this over and do option number 1. The children seem genuinely surprised and thankful. They leave skipping, heading for the nearest food vendor. Each character gains +1 reroll token. Well, that's nice. It's not exactly what I was hoping to find, but hey, a reroll token sounds like a pretty good thing to have. Certainly useful. So after completing that city encounter, we're going to go ahead and be exchanging 1 groat for each of my characters for 1 reroll token. Pretty awesome. That's going to come in handy, I'm sure, later on. The reroll token can be spent once in order to immediately reroll 1 die you just rolled, ignoring the previous result. You may spend more than 1 of these tokens if you have them to reroll more dice if you wish, but you may not reroll a die a second time.
Smells of cooking pots and the sound of fervent bartering roll over you. Glancing around, you meet the eyes of the destitute peering from dark alleys and crooked doorways. The square itself seethes with people who retreat to give your party a wide berth when they notice you, creating an island in the rolling sea of bodies. You come to another area bereft of people. At the heart of the square is a 10-foot-tall iron post driven permanently into the flagstones. Heavy links hang from welded bolts, and a large ring of black soot scores the area at its base. Others you have seen of this kind are made from wood. How many people are they burning to warrant one made of iron? You canvass the area and discover that this functions as a crossroads between East and West Bastone, and it seems no violent deaths have been discovered in West Bastone.
It seems we have discovered clue number 2 as the app is instructed, and it's telling us to place location token number 4 on the map. We have a new place to go check out. Well, I was going to go to the tavern, but, you know, curiosity killed the cat, so I'm probably going to go for 4. So we're going to go ahead and have the free company move up to the 4 position. We'll be placing this token in the time track, as we always do, and going back to the app.
Using the information you have gathered and, with the help of a couple of street urchins from the east side, you find the spot the noble was killed. You walk the shady alley. Even the drunk and dying avoid the end of this street. Bloodstains still spatter the walls, the rain running down them having little effect on the marks. You search the area for something to help you in your task.
All right, so the free company would really like to pass this location 4 reasoning check. It's a difficulty 4, so we need 4 on the successes in total. We know from the last time I did a reasoning check, it was difficulty 5, and I chose to roll and pick cards in the deck that totaled to 5. So I had 3 dice in the last one that I did and 2 cards. And in the end, I totaled up 8, which actually looked very similar to what you're seeing on screen right now in terms of the value. I had 2 2s here, a 2, that's 6, and then the 2 1s, that was essentially the 8 I got, which was a lot more than I needed. So this time, knowing that I only need to get a 4, and I'd really like to avoid getting some blanks, I'm going to actually reduce myself down to 4, but I still have to decide, how do I want to break this up? Do I want to split it between dice and the cards? Do I want to go just dice, just cards? Well, we pulled 2 successful cards that have a 2 and a 1 on it, meaning this deck now has a worse ratio inside of it, being that there's more blanks in there. The chance, I should say, there's not more blanks, but there's a higher chance of pulling blanks than there was before. So because of that, I'm going to gamble with the dice, and I'm going to choose to go ahead and roll 4 dice this time. So we're going to see how this works, and no cards whatsoever, just to give it up a little bit of a difference in terms of what could happen. So I'm leaving my fate up to the dice. Let's see how it goes. Oh, that was lucky. This one just came around to a 2. I swear I saw a blank there that gave me half of a heart attack. So that is 6 right there, which means we passed the test while also having a heart attack. I think we should get bonus tokens for that, but regardless, let's go back to the app and let it know that we have passed.
Your eyes follow trickling water down the walls, watching as it gathers in the gutters, then runs towards a nearby sewer covered with a hatch. Curious, you haven't noticed other large hatches. A coincidence? Examining the hatch, you find it's not fixed and sits off kilter. Your nose protests, but your guts tell you this is it.
Well, that worked out fantastically. We all gain, all the characters involved, 1 reroll token. So I've gone ahead and grabbed a reroll token for each one of them, and I'll be placing them on each of their character boards and cards.
You squeeze through the hatch into a dark maze of rough-hewn passages, your torches glowing pale blue in the noxious air. Ankle-deep in waste and muck, you slog through winding tunnels, kicking aside rats and brushing away cobwebs, looking for any clue as to what might be behind this. Around one corner you stop. There is a splashing. A thick, heavy motion lumbers towards you from a shadowy side passage. Sounds of chittering and nervous clicking conjure memories of past ambushes, prompting each of you to draw your weapons. Whatever it is low and hunched. This is no rat, this is something much larger, and it's moving fast.
So now we have a secret decision to make, but the beauty of playing solo is you get to decide for the entire party. Now, if we had multiple players around the game table, then if half or more of those players chose to attack, the whole company would attack, but no discussions allowed. So you basically would use some kind of voting system, maybe 1s or 2s, in order to decide how your company is going to move forward. But in this case, for me, being that I'm playing solo, I can choose whether to attack or not attack. And out of the 2 choices, I like the defensive one a little bit better, knowing that a large object is coming towards us and it's barreling at us at quite some speed.
As it scampers closer, you can make out a hunched mass of ragged hair. You ready your weapons at the approach. As it enters the flickering light from your torches, a man's face emerges, a rat catcher from the look of him. "You!" he shouts. "Have you seen it?" He notices your weapons drawn. "You have? Good. Come, you must see this." He turns, but then cautiously looks back. "Don't eat any of the rats. They're mine." He glares, showing broken teeth. At that, he scurries off the way he came at a surprising speed. It's not much, but it's the only thing you have. You follow. The little man is fast, and in this confined space, it's difficult to keep up.
So for this test, it says that each character has to perform a survival check, difficulty 3, and if you fail, you fall hurting yourself. So each one of our characters could potentially hurt themselves and knock themselves down from 6 HP down to 5. Now we're trying to make a 3 here on this survival check, and I'm going to decide to roll 2 dice for the exile first. He's going to go up first and try to make this, and I'm going to have 1 card drawn from the deck. So I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to have 2 dice and 1 card and hope that's enough. Again, I'm trying to mitigate the fact that I know there's a potential chance in this deck here that I could be pulling more blanks, and also try to get through the deck so that I can recycle it to get some of those cards back in later on. So let's go ahead and see how this pans out. 2 cards, or 2 dice. That is not a good start right there. So that's a 1. And then the first card off the top, oh, just barely made it, and it's a critical 2 as well. So that card just saved me. So the exile is perfectly fine. All right, our Warbear is up next. Now remember, even though that was a really close call, I did still have on all my characters these wonderful reroll tokens. So if I really need to, and I really don't want to have them taking damage, I could try to reroll a die in order to save myself. Hence the reason why I'm using dice as well as cards here. So I'm going to go ahead now and roll 2 dice for the Warbear, and let's see how things pan out. Oh, wow. Okay, so again, this is the kind of roll you'd want to see when you're fighting somebody. That's incredible because this will allow me to roll more dice, but I don't want to roll anymore. So I'll pull one white card off the top, and look at that. It's a blank. It worked out perfectly. So the Warbear has gotten through unscathed. All right, so our two full characters managed to get through no problem. So let's see if the priest can pull it off as well. Again, I have reroll tokens on the priest, so if I need them, I'll use them. Oh yeah, there we go. That's a 3. Perfect. And then a blank. Look at that. It's working out flawlessly. Let's continue this trend. And last but not least, we have the Ranger. So the Ranger's going to go ahead. Come on. Here's hoping. Oh my goodness. Luck is with me today. Now, I just want you guys to know this, that each one of these dice, face-wise, has 2 faces worth of blanks. Don't know how I'm pulling them the way I am, but everything is working out. So I think at this point in the video, I'm just going to jump to my local convenience store, pick up a lotto ticket right away. So our entire party made it completely unscathed, not a single person falling.
You enter a small chamber. Bones are strewn across the floor, and heaps of rags dot the area. Oddly, a pile of books is carefully stacked against one wall. You wonder how this could smell worse than the passages you were just in. The rat catcher is scrabbling through one of the piles, then rises, wielding something over his head. You realise it's a dismembered arm. Look at the bites here. See? Rats. The hand is calloused. A farmer, my guess. From the underways, mushrooms and roots. His nails long, chipped. Good digger. 2 things I know are men and rats. But never nothing like this. He turns the arm over and puts his finger deep into a blackened wound. The tooth that bit this arm. He looks at you with a serious glare and holds his thumb and forefinger 6 inches away from each other. You ask him if he knows where the rat came from. He looks up at you, almost excited. He nods. Let Cedric join the great hunt, and I'll take you. Do you, 1, let Cedric join your party? If so, gain Cedric as an ally? Or 2, do you leave Cedric behind and find your own way?
So I have a decision to make here, and I have to choose whether or not I want Cedric to join my party or not, or I could leave him behind. And I don't know whether I trust this individual yet or not. I find it really odd that he's scurrying around at a really rapid speed, very similar to an animal. Kind of creepy. Doesn't really seem right that he was in there in the first place in the sewers. I don't know if I trust what he says in the first place. So I'm actually going to kind of go with my gut here and say I'm going to leave him behind. As much as I'd love to have him as an ally, I don't know if I can trust him. All right, so the app is telling me to place a time token on the time track. This actually might have come back to bit me a little bit because the next thing on the time track here is gaining an extra unique item that would happen at the end of the encounter. But now that it's covered up and it states that I don't gain this anyway, even if it was something I gain immediately, I'm not going to get it regardless in this case. So we've lost a little bit of time here. My guess is that by not having him help me through the sewers, we're probably going to have a tougher time getting through.
After several hours, you eventually find a junction that runs along the outer wall of the city. You can see the Deepwood through the hole where a mammoth foundation stone has somehow shifted. Blood trails concentrate on this point from all directions, as if bodies or body parts have been forced through the gap. The trail carries through the opening and leads off into the Deepwood. In the bloodstains, you make out the tracks of several clawed footprints. You get the distinct impression there is more than one of these things. Do you, 1, wait and set a trap for these things when they return to the hole? 2, squeeze through the hole and follow the trail while it's fresh?
Well, based on the fact that it no longer matters whether or not I spend any more time, seeing as I have burned past all the bonuses I could potentially get, I might want to wait and set a trap for these things when they return to the hole. So I think I'm going to go that route.
You coat the area in oil and cleave to the shadows, lying in wait for the trap to be sprung. Twilight is settling beyond the hole when the scratchings of clawed feet can be heard outside. A head the size of a wolf's juts into the gap, followed by a nightmare of festering fur and yellow teeth as it presses its bulk into the passage. Behind it another head appears, then another and another. One turns towards you and hisses. You strike your flint. Flames engulf the brood. Squealing, writhing bodies roll on the ground. You dispatch the remaining ones quickly, disgust strengthening your blows. Now for whatever's out there.
So the awesome news is that we're going to begin the encounter ambushing the enemy, and that's because we went ahead and chose to do what we did, I think. That's kind of part of the fun of making these choices, is they all lead in different directions. In this case, when you actually are ambushing something else at the beginning of an encounter, it's going to actually change the phases. So normally in a typical phase during an encounter, it's the refresh phase, the Oathsworn phase, the encounter phase, and then the end of round phase. So because we're going to be ambushing, we get to start at the refresh phase right at the very beginning. Now, if we had been actually ambushed ourselves by whatever that is coming at us, then we would lose the refresh phase and the Oathsworn phase, which is basically two phases that regain ability cards and regenerate animus, and allow players to use animus to either move or use ability cards. We'd lose all that and go right to the encounter phase, and that's how the game can actually be changed.
You squeeze through the small hole and find yourselves in the no man's land between the city walls and the Deepwood. You look off to the tree line and check your compass. This item is near sacred to you, as well as all free companies. It is the only chance you have of navigating your way back after you enter the Deepwood. You steel yourself and head in.
So now we're going to place location number 8 here, just outside of Bastogne, and we're going to have our free company move there. And of course, as soon as we move there, this will go down to the time track, and as the app states, it's not going to trigger any events on the time track. All characters gain a +1 reroll token. I gotta say, our characters are killing it in terms of reroll tokens. We now each have 3.
The trail is not hard to follow. The sickly brush is torn and trampled by many feet. Half a league from the city walls, you come across a large circular depression, littered with scraps and bones. That is when you see her, the hulking rat-like form of the broodmother. She is twice the height of a man. Her back undulates with rats that swarm around her as she lifts her huge snout, testing the air. Her great head of rotten fur and gnawing teeth rolls towards you, and with a ravenous hunger, her eyes meet yours.
I'd say we found what we were looking for, a gigantic rat known as the Broodmother just outside the city of Bastogne. So we found her, and in the upcoming video we are going to dive into the Chapter 1 encounter where we go head to head against this gigantic monstrosity. So I really hope this is helping you make an informed decision on the Kickstarter. Hopefully you'll join me in the next part of this Kickstarter preview. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.